When Alpha Damon is ambushed by wolves on a moonlit patrol, he's saved by a quiet, lone Omega whose courage defies rank and reason. A stranger who treats his wound and joined him track the attackers through battle and betrayal. He learns that true strength is not found in dominance or fear, but in the rare courage to forgive what once sought to destroy him. But when the truth of that night returns, will love still recognize its savior? Tell me, where in the world are you listening from tonight? The moon listens too. Subscribe and let the story begin. Chapter 1. The moon hung low and swollen, a red eye staring through the skeletal pines. Damon moved like a shadow cut from stone, his silver-furred wolves gliding in silence at his back. Every paw step echoed obedience, every heartbeat bent to his command. Snow whispered underfoot as the patrol crested the ridge, the mountain wind tugging at his dark cloak. Below, the Silver Fang fortress gleamed, iron walls, disciplined hearts, a kingdom that bowed but never smiled. Damon had built it that way. Strength demanded distance. Fear was easier to control than affection. Still, even the strongest walls had voices. He could hear them now. Quiet doubts buried beneath the howling wind. Whispers that the Alpha had forgotten how to bleed. That loyalty ruled by fear was not loyalty at all. He silenced them the way he silenced everything. Through perfection. His stride, his breath, his command. Measured, unflinching. He expected the same of those beside him. When Mason lagged, Damon's gaze alone straightened the wolf's spine. Yet beneath that precision lay unrest. His chest ached with something nameless when he saw the flicker of reverence, or was it dread, in his pack's eyes. Once, when he'd been young, they had laughed with him. Now no one dared. As they crossed into the forest's heart, a scent brushed against the cold air. Wild, faintly sweet, threaded with danger. Damon halted. "We're not alone," he murmured. His wolves bristled, forming a circle. The silence deepened. Branches creaked, snow drifted. Then from somewhere unseen, the forest exhaled. 6 sets of eyes glimmered in the dark. The moon burned red, and the night held its breath. Chapter 2. In the fortress below, torches flickered against stone walls. Calvin stood in the council chamber, eyes lowered in practiced humility. He had been Damon's brother long before he became his beta, the bond between them forged in blood and duty. His loyalty had always been eloquent, but tonight his silence was sharper than his words. Elias leaned beside him, arms folded, gaze lingering on the empty Alpha's throne. "He rides under the blood moon again," Elias said quietly. "Some omens shouldn't be tested." Calvin's jaw tightened. He believes himself untouchable. The thought came unbidden, poisonous. Out loud, he only said, "He keeps us safe." Mariah, the pack's healer, drifted in carrying herbs that smelled of pine and iron. "Safe," she echoed, setting them down. "If silence and bruised hearts are safety." Her tone dared them to argue, but none did. Around them, the pack moved with mechanical rhythm. Wolves trained to precision, not passion. Fear had made them efficient, but it had also made them ghosts. They spoke of loyalty with their mouths while their hearts murmured other things. Weariness, envy, resentment. Outside, a lone howl split the night. It wasn't one of theirs. Calvin's head snapped toward the sound, instinct thrumming beneath his calm mask. He met Elias's gaze, and for an instant the air between them crackled with something dangerous. Elias spoke first. "Rogues again?" "Perhaps," Calvin said, though his pulse betrayed excitement. Rogues were chaos, but chaos made cracks in crowns. Mariah crossed herself with an herb-stained hand. "No Alpha stays unchallenged beneath a blood moon," she whispered half to herself. Her words slithered through the chamber like prophecy, and far above them on the mountain path the first whisper of treachery took form. Chapter 3. The forest struck first. One moment he commanded, the next claws tore through his flank. 5 wolves he knew, Jackson, Mason, Colby, and 2 others closed in. And somewhere beyond them a 6th pair of eyes glimmered in the dark. "Stand down!" he barked, voice cracking through the storm of growls. None obeyed. They circled him with precision born of familiarity, knowing his strengths, his patterns. Their loyalty had turned inward, weaponized. The betrayal cut deeper than their claws. Blood steamed against the snow. Damon lunged, crushing Mason's shoulder in his jaws, but a second wolf slammed him into a tree. Bones splintered. He struck back, but there were too many, too fast. Their movements mirrored his own, his teachings used against him. Then through the chaos, a new scent cleaved the air. Wild, female, untamed. A blur burst from the shadows, small, lithe, furious. She hit the largest wolf mid-leap, teeth sinking deep into fur. Her snarl was sharp enough to split the night. The rogues scattered, startled by her ferocity. Damon staggered, barely upright. The strange Omega stood between him and death, eyes burning amber, body slick with blood that wasn't hers. "Go!" she hissed, not to him but to the rogues. "Run, or I'll finish what you started." They fled, vanishing into the storm. Silence fell, heavy and ringing. Damon's vision dimmed, his heartbeat slow and disbelieving. The woman turned toward him, breath ragged. "Breathe," she whispered, catching him before he fell. "I won't let you die." Snow swallowed them both, the forest sealing its secret, and somewhere beneath that crimson moon destiny changed its scent. Chapter 4. The first thing Damon felt was heat, soft, rhythmic, and human. His body lay on furs that smelled of smoke and crushed herbs. Every muscle screamed, but the warmth kept pulling him back from the dark. A fire hissed beside the cave wall, its light painting gold across the face bent over him. The woman's hands were small, deft, and trembling. She stitched the gash in his shoulder with thread the color of ash, biting her lip with focus fierce enough to still the tremor in her fingers. He caught the faint hitch of her breath when his eyes opened. "You should be dead," she murmured without looking up. "Then why am I not?" His voice rasped like gravel. Her lashes lifted, amber eyes wild and clear. "Because I didn't want you to be." The words settled between them, alive as the flame. She worked in silence after that, close enough that her scent wrapped around him, wildflowers caught in storm wind. It scraped against something raw inside him, something instinctual and ancient. His wolf stirred beneath the pain, recognizing her scent before his mind dared to. When she finished, she wiped the blood from his skin with a damp cloth. "Stay still," she said softer now. "You'll bleed again. I've survived worse. You won't survive pride." He almost smiled. Almost. The curve of her mouth mirrored the defiance in her tone, a creature unafraid of the alpha she tended. The fire crackled. The cave shrank around them until every heartbeat felt shared. She leaned closer to bind his arm, and his breath brushed her wrist. Her pulse stuttered, one note off rhythm, one truth too loud. "What do they call you?" he asked. "Sierra." Her voice broke on the last syllable as though it cost her to say it. He felt the echo of that break inside his chest. Outside, the wind howled across the mountain mouth, carrying the scent of blood and snow. Inside, the silence was intimate enough to bruise. She moved away only when his eyelids drooped, exhaustion reclaiming him. Before darkness claimed him again, he caught her watching him, not with fear, but with something perilously close to recognition. Her hand still shook long after he slept, and she didn't know if it was from fear or fate. Chapter 5. Snowlight leaked through cracks in the stone. Days passed in fragments, sleep, pain, her voice pulling him through both. Damon healed by will alone, though each movement dragged pride through glass. His wounds closed, his patience didn't. Sierra gathered herbs outside the den, humming under her breath. He listened even when he pretended not to. The tune was old, one his mother once sang before the wars. He hated that it soothed him. "You should rest," she said when she found him trying to stand. "I've rested enough. You've barely lived." Their gazes met, his iron, hers ember. The air between them thickened. She moved to help him, but he pushed her hands away. "I don't need—" Her palm struck his chest, not in anger, but command. "Then act like an alpha, not a child trying to impress ghosts." The words stunned him. Few dared speak so plainly. She turned back to the fire, slicing roots with practiced precision. Beneath the sharpness of her voice was tenderness, the kind that grew only in those who'd lost too much. "You speak as if you know me," he said. "I know pain when I see it, and loneliness." He wanted to ask what she'd lost, but didn't. She didn't ask what haunted him either. Their silence became its own confession. Each evening she pressed a cup of bitter tonic into his hands, forcing him to drink while her fingers brushed his. A flicker of warmth spread faster than the medicine. When she caught his stare lingering too long, she pretended not to notice, but her throat always betrayed her, fluttering with a heartbeat that answered his. At night he dreamed of the ambush. 5 wolves in the dark. Always 5. The 6th remained a blur his mind refused to name. He woke sweating, teeth bared. Sierra sat near the dying fire, watching quietly. She didn't speak. She just reached out, brushing his hair from his face with careful fingers. "Sleep," she whispered. "You're safe here." He wanted to believe her. He wanted to stop hearing the ghosts of his pack in every gust of wind. But when she laid her hand over his chest, something deeper stirred. The pull of a bond neither dared name. He dreamed again that night, but when he woke, her scent still clung to him like destiny itself. Chapter 6. The morning came sharp and blue. Damon could walk again, though pain shadowed every step. Sierra packed quietly, her movements efficient, face unreadable. "You mean to leave me here," he said. "You're strong enough now." "Strong enough to hunt those who betrayed me," he corrected. Her hand stilled on the satchel. She didn't look up. "Then you'll die trying." "Maybe," he said, "but not before I find them." She exhaled, slow and pained. He sensed the argument building behind her eyes, the conflict she wouldn't voice. Then, softer, "You don't even know who they were." "I will." He stepped toward the cave mouth, testing his leg. The wind hit him, carrying the stench of blood long frozen into the earth. "You know these mountains," he said. "Guide me." She hesitated, her pulse betraying the storm inside her. She should have said no, she should have walked away. Yet the bond pulled tight, invisible, unrelenting. "I'll take you as far as the old border," she said finally. "Further," he countered. Her eyes lifted to his, wild amber, already surrendering. "Then further," she breathed. They walked through frost-bitten pines where the world seemed to hold its breath. Tracks appeared, wolf prints circling back on themselves, deliberate and mocking. Damon crouched, fingers brushing the mark. "Old," he said, "but fresh enough to taunt me." Sierra knelt beside him. "Sometimes it's better not to follow ghosts. I don't stop until I have answers." She looked at him, and for a heartbeat the truth almost spilled out, that she already had them, that she'd lived them. But she only said, "Then I'll show you the way." Their journey began beneath a pale sun, 2 figures moving through snow and shadow. Distance narrowed as danger grew. When he stumbled, she steadied him without thinking. When she shivered, he offered his cloak without question. By nightfall, they made camp beside a frozen stream. The firelight painted his scars, the glint of silver against tan skin. She watched him quietly, remembering blood on his chest, her hands saving him, her heart betraying her. He caught her gaze. "What are you thinking?" That fate has a cruel sense of humor, she said. He almost smiled. And what does fate want with us? Her answer trembled like the flame between them. To see if two broken things can make one whole. The wind howled approval, and somewhere deep inside him his wolf agreed. Chapter 7. Snow silenced everything except their breaths. Damon walked ahead, slow but steady, each step a refusal to appear weak. Behind him, Sierra's boots cracked the frost, the scent of her blood and pine following close. She said little, but he could feel her watching him the way the moon watched the sea, unblinking, inevitable. When his strength faltered, he masked it with command. "Stay close." "I already am," she said, and her voice slipped through him like heat through armor. They stopped at dusk where the trees opened to a clearing. Damon built the fire while Sierra gathered kindling. Every motion between them found rhythm like old instincts learning one another. When the flame rose, its light gilded her face, catching the curve of her jaw, the stray strands of hair that refused to obey her braid. She sat across from him, knees drawn close, eyes bright and too knowing. "You lead like a man haunted," she said softly. He looked up sharply. "You assume much. I see much." She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that stripped away defenses. "You wear loneliness like a crown." He said nothing. Yet inside him something shifted, the faint, unfamiliar ache of being seen. The night grew colder. Sierra inched nearer to the fire, her shiver small but not hidden. Damon exhaled, unclasping his cloak, and without a word draped it around her shoulders. His fingers brushed the side of her neck. She startled but didn't move away. "Thank you," she murmured. He turned back to the flames, jaw tight. "Sleep. We move at dawn." She lay down near him, close enough that he could hear her heartbeat, distant enough to make it torture. The fire flickered shadows over their faces, and when sleep claimed her, he finally looked, at the softness that contradicted her strength, at the scar near her collarbone that begged to be traced. His wolf stirred again, restless, recognizing what his mind refused to. When she shifted in her sleep, curling unconsciously toward his warmth, he didn't move. His arm fell over her by instinct, protective, possessive, unthinking. Outside, the pines whispered approval, as though the forest itself remembered what fate looked like when it began to bloom. In the hush of dawn, his scent lingered on her skin, and for the first time in years, Damon slept without nightmares. Chapter 8. At dawn, they were on the move. The scent of death came first, sharp iron, old and fresh at once. Damon crouched beside the corpse, half buried in snow, the red stark against the white. The body had been torn open by claws that knew exactly where to strike. Sierra stood beside him, silent, arms folded. Her face didn't change, but her pulse quickened. He heard it. She knew this kill. "He was one of mine," Damon muttered, tracing the mark carved into the rogue's flesh. "My crest. My lesson. Someone wanted me to see this." "Or to remind you of what you've made," she said quietly. His head lifted, eyes sharp. "You think this is my fault? I think everything born of fear ends this way." He stared at her, fury and confusion warring in his chest. She didn't flinch. The fire he'd seen in her during the attack still burned, but there was sorrow beneath it now, a grief so old it had turned into strength. She knelt, brushing snow from the dead wolf's fur, murmuring something too soft for him to hear. A farewell, perhaps. The tenderness in it struck him harder than the sight of the corpse. "Why do you mourn him?" "Because someone should." Their gazes locked, Alpha and Omega, predator and healer, bound by something deeper than rank. He wanted to understand her. She prayed he never would. When they rose to leave, the wind shifted. Damon froze, nostrils flaring. "We're being watched." Sierra's hand went to her knife. In the distance, eyes glinted through the trees, brief, mocking. Then gone. He gave chase, ignoring pain and reason. Sierra followed, cursing under her breath, snow flying beneath her boots. The forest closed around them, breathless, frantic, but whoever it was vanished like mist. They returned to camp, both shaken. Damon's fury turned inward. "They were testing us," he said. "Testing you," she corrected, voice trembling. "I'm just the one fate tied to your survival." Her words were meant to be jest, but they landed heavy, truthful. He stepped toward her, stopping when she looked up. Her eyes glowed amber in the half-light, and for a heartbeat neither moved. Between the scent of blood and the scent of her, he could no longer tell which one drove him mad. If your heart's racing as fiercely as theirs, don't look away. Subscribe. The night still has secrets to spill. Chapter 9. They reached the river by nightfall, its current fierce, cutting silver through the black forest. Damon stopped at the edge, staring at his reflection. A king reduced to a man chasing ghosts. Sierra knelt to refill the waterskins. "You're not invincible, you know." He glanced at her. "You sound certain." "Because I've watched you bleed." She handed him the flask, her fingers brushing his. Electricity shivered through both. He held her gaze, the world narrowing to the sound of rushing water and two ragged breaths. "You saved my life," he said. "Why?" Her lashes lowered. "Maybe I didn't want to watch another life end for nothing." "You speak like someone who's buried too many." "I have." The words slipped before she could stop them. Her eyes softened, haunted. "My pack died for mistakes that weren't theirs." He studied her, quiet now. "And your alpha?" "Gone," she whispered. "Like yours will be if you keep chasing ghosts." The challenge in her tone stirred something primal. He stepped closer, close enough that the river spray cooled her skin. "You think I fear death? I think you fear being alone when it finds you." For a heartbeat, his hand lifted, fingers grazing her jaw, rough against the delicate line of her face. Her pulse leapt beneath his touch, betraying everything she couldn't say. The river roared between them, wild and merciless, echoing what neither dared admit. He withdrew his hand, breaking the spell, turning back to the water. She looked away, blinking against tears she refused to shed. "Rest," he said finally. "We move at first light." But when she lay down, she could still feel his warmth lingering where his hand had been, as if her skin already knew the shape of fate. Under the moonlight, their shadows touched even when they didn't. Chapter 10. Mist rolled low across the valley, swallowing the sound of their boots. Damon's breath came in white clouds as he traced claw marks along a birch trunk, symbols carved with purpose, not rage. The runes glowed faintly where sap bled. "Someone's marking paths," he said. Sierra stepped beside him, the hood of her cloak slick with dew. "Or warnings." Her voice was steady, but her scent betrayed unease, fear spiced with recognition. She knew these signs. Damon's gaze caught the slight tremor in her hand before she hid it within her sleeve. Behind them, wolves padded silently. Elias emerged from the fog, cloak dark with rain. "Alpha," he said, lowering his head, "your brother is gone. His quarters empty, sent cold 3 days past." Damon's jaw tightened. "He wouldn't run." Elias hesitated. "Maybe he didn't run, maybe he's hunting." Sierra looked away, eyes fixed on the fog-thick horizon. Damon turned toward her, reading tension he didn't understand. "What do you know of this?" "Only that fog hides more than it reveals." He stepped closer, his voice a low growl. "Do not speak in riddles, Omega." Her chin lifted. "Then stop demanding truth when you're not ready to hear it." The pack shifted uneasily, pretending not to listen. He should have reprimanded her. Instead, he admired the fire in her defiance. It was the same fire that had kept him alive. "Enough," he said finally. "Elias, take them back to camp." The beta nodded but lingered. "Alpha, Calvin's scent fades east." At that, Sierra flinched, so slight it might have been the wind. But Damon saw. He always saw. When the others vanished into the mist, silence stretched between them. The forest dripped. The fog breathed. "East, then?" he said, turning toward the rising chill. "Damon." Her voice caught his name as if she'd forgotten it belonged to him. He turned back, waiting. She said nothing more. They walked side by side, the distance between them a wound neither could close. The fog thickened until even the moon disappeared. Somewhere beyond it, eyes watched, ancient, patient, familiar. Chapter 11. The storm broke at dusk. Rain drove them into a hunter's cabin, long abandoned, half-rotted, yet mercifully dry. Sierra struck flint, sparks leapt, catching the wood. Soon firelight painted the room in amber and shadow. Damon peeled off his soaked tunic, the scar across his shoulder glistening. Sierra tried not to look and failed. Her throat tightened, her wolf stirred, whispering mine in the marrow of her bones. He caught her gaze and almost smiled. "You're staring. You're bleeding. Then stop staring and fix it." She crossed to him, kneeling beside where he sat on the rough floor. The cut was shallow, but she pressed cloth to it anyway. His skin burned beneath her touch, his breath shortened. "Still reckless," she murmured. "Still bossy," he replied, voice low. Thunder cracked above them, the fire flared, throwing sparks across his jaw. They were too close, her hand on his chest, his pulse beneath her palm. She looked up, meaning to scold him. Instead, she found his eyes, ice and heat bound together. "Trust is dangerous," he said. "So is denying what's already true." He leaned forward before she finished speaking. The kiss began like defiance and ended like surrender. It wasn't gentle. It was every moment of restraint finally breaking, every fear turned to flame. Her fingers fisted in his hair. His hand slid along her waist, gripping her as though the world might fall apart if he didn't hold her still. Then, breathless, he tore away. "This changes nothing." Her lips were swollen, her voice barely a whisper. "It changes everything." Rain battered the roof, fire hissed in protest, neither moved. Outside, unseen eyes gleamed through the slats of the wall, silent witnesses to the forbidden bond sealed beneath thunder's roar. Beyond the storm, something watched and smiled unseen as destiny shifted in the dark. Chapter 12. Morning came cold and pale. Mist rose from the forest floor as they followed the trail east. Damon crouched beside a corpse half hidden in leaves, a rogue, throat torn out. Another lay a few paces beyond, mangled. "This wasn't a fight," he said. "It was a purge." Sierra's eyes lingered on the bodies. The scent of blood turned her stomach, not from horror, but memory. "Someone silencing witnesses," Damon added. "Or cleaning a mistake," she whispered. He looked up sharply. "You speak as if you know whose mistake." She said nothing, and that silence screamed louder than any lie. He stood, towering over her, every line of his body carved from suspicion and hurt. "Tell me what you're hiding." "Only ghosts," she said, "and you wouldn't believe them." He stepped closer, close enough for her breath to fog against his chest. "Try me." She met his stare, fierce and trembling all at once. "If I do, you'll see me as one of them." Lightning flashed somewhere beyond the mountains, faint but threatening. Her words hung there, half-truths and warning intertwined. Damon turned away, rage caged behind discipline. "We move on." They walked until dusk without speaking. The forest thinned, revealing a stone outcrop marked with a single claw score, deep, deliberate, fresh. Damon traced it. The groove matched Sierra's hand perfectly. She watched him, heart pounding, waiting for realization. It didn't come. Yet. The sky burned crimson as the sun sank, staining them both in the same guilty light. The stone bore her mark, but only the forest knew it. Chapter 13. Snow swept the courtyard in thin white veils as Damon crossed the gates of Silverfang Keep. The fortress loomed like a beast carved from stone, scarred, loyal, unyielding. The pack emerged from shadowed archways to see their alphas return, the murmurs rising like wind against walls. Some bowed, others only stared at the Omega beside him. Sierra moved in silence, her hood pulled low, her pulse betraying what her eyes would not: fear. Every gaze that met hers was sharpened by suspicion. She did not flinch. Inside the grand hall, firelight threw restless gold across the walls. The air tasted of iron and unease. Damon stood before his wolves, his voice low but steady. "The rogues are broken," he said. "Their leader fled east. We hunt until the last is found." No one spoke, but Mariah's whisper coiled through the crowd. "The Omega smells of ash and blood, not ours." Elias shot her a warning glance, but doubt had already rooted. Damon felt it in the tension of the room, the way loyalty bent under silence. When Sierra shifted closer, the movement was small, but enough. He caught the faint tremor in her hand, the scent of her fear laced with defiance. He turned toward the throne at the far end of the hall, choosing power over tenderness. "Prepare the hunters," he said. "We strike before dawn." Elias stepped forward. "Alpha, you're wounded." "I said dawn." The pack dispersed. Only Sierra remained. "They'll never follow you if I stay," she whispered. He met her eyes, and for one heartbeat the Alpha vanished. The man beneath gazed back. "Then they'll learn." Outside wind rattled the banners until one tore loose, spiraling into the snow. The omen went unnoticed. Calvin had left the fortress the night of the ambush and vanished. Suspicion followed. His name echoed through the keep like a curse no one dared speak. Chapter 14. Brandon was dragged into the chamber bound in chains, his mouth split by a cruel smile. He was caught by the guards hiding in the woods. The torchlight painted him half shadow, half mockery. Damon stood before him, tall and silent, every breath measured like a blade. "Who sent you?" Brandon's laugh was low. "You already know." Damon struck once, not out of rage, but precision. "Answer." The rogue spat blood on the stone. "Ask your healer." Sierra stood behind Damon, her face calm, her scent chaos. Brandon's gaze found her, and something in his smirk shifted into fear. "She's still breathing?" he whispered. "I thought Calvin—" Damon's voice sliced through. "You will speak his name again, and I'll tear out your tongue." Brandon's eyes gleamed. "You think there were 5? Count again." The silence that followed was not disbelief, it was realization. Sierra's heartbeat spiked. Damon turned toward her, but she had already stepped back into the shadows. "Who was the 6th? Damon demanded. Brandon only smiled. "Ask yourself that. I thought you knew it all." The words struck harder than any blow. Damon motioned to Elias. "Lock him below, no food, no sleep." As Brandon was dragged away, he laughed until it broke into coughing. The echo followed them out, ragged and mocking. When the doors closed, Damon faced Sierra. "You've gone pale." "I'm cold," she said softly. He took a step toward her. "You're hiding something." Her eyes met his. "So are you." The torches hissed as if they'd heard the lie in both voices. Brandon's laugh lingered even after he was gone, sharp, knowing, and alive. Chapter 15. Night fell heavy, wrapped in the hush of false peace. The interrogation chamber stood empty, its stones still warm from fire. Damon sat at the edge of his bed, armor discarded, thoughts jagged. The pack slept uneasy, and the keep itself seemed to hold its breath. Sierra entered quietly, the scent of herbs clinging to her. She had tended to his wounds again without being asked. Her touch was gentle, but his pulse betrayed his calm. "You should rest," she said. He looked at her as though rest was a word he no longer believed in. "Every time I close my eyes, I see fog and claws." Then stay awake, she murmured, lowering beside him. You're safer here. When her fingers brushed his jaw, he caught her wrist, holding it there. The firelight burned gold between them. His hand slid along her throat. Not in threat, but reverence. She didn't flinch. Do you trust me? He asked. I don't know, she whispered, but I want to. He leaned in then, slow, deliberate, as though the act itself were fragile enough to shatter the world. The kiss was quiet this time, almost tender. He tasted the storm still trapped behind her calm, and she felt the alpha tremble against her lips. Later, when the fire died, they lay tangled in the hush that comes after war. A heartbeat away from peace neither dared name. Dawn crept pale across the stone. Sierra woke first, tracing the scar that ran across his shoulder, wondering how many truths lay beneath his skin. Outside, a scream split the morning. Elias burst through the door, breathless. Brandon's gone, he said. The cell's empty. Damon was already on his feet, every trace of softness burned away. The first light of morning revealed what the night had stolen. If this truth cut deeper than claws, breathe, then subscribe. Love's not done with them yet. Chapter 16. The forest bled twilight when it happened. Wind howled between the trees, thick with the metallic scent of blood. Damon and Sierra rode ahead, the path narrowing into shadow. Behind them, wolves moved in disciplined silence until a scream tore through the hush. Brandon crashed from the undergrowth, shackles still clinging to his wrists. His face was pale, his eyes wild with desperation. You think you've won? He spat, stumbling forward. You've been hunting ghosts while the traitor sleeps in your bed. The pack drew their blades. Damon's voice was a growl. Stand down. But Brandon wasn't speaking to them. His trembling hand lifted, pointing straight at Sierra. There were 6 wolves that night. She was the 6th. The world seemed to stop breathing. Sierra froze. Every heartbeat thundered in her chest, too fast, too loud. Damon stared at her, confusion flickering to disbelief, disbelief to horror. Tell me he lies, he said quietly. Her lips parted, no sound. Only the snow whispered between them. Brandon laughed, a broken, wheezing sound. She wore your crest while cutting your throat. Damon lunged. His claws ripped through air, catching Brandon's shoulder before the man could flee. Blood spattered across the snow. Brandon gasped, smiling even as he fell. She saved you, didn't she? You never wondered why? The light in his eyes dimmed. Sierra stood unmoving. The wolves circled, their growls a chorus of judgment. Her silence spoke louder than denial ever could. Damon turned slowly, his expression unreadable. Answer me. Her voice faltered. I can't. The forest shivered as though the moon itself recoiled. He took one step back from her, then another. The bond that once pulled them together now burned like a chain around his heart. Take her, he ordered. No one moved. Even Elias hesitated, watching the way Sierra's eyes filled. Not with guilt, but sorrow so human it made his chest ache. She finally whispered, You already know the truth, Damon. You've just never wanted to see it. The words broke something in him. He turned away. Snow began to fall again, soft, relentless, cold. Her silence became her confession, and the forest kept it like a grave. Chapter 17. Night swallowed the forest whole. Sierra sat chained beneath a dead oak, moonlight spilling over her like water. The pack had retreated to the ridge, their murmurs fading with the wind. Damon stood apart, his shadow long, his fury contained behind stillness. When he spoke, his voice was low. Tell me everything. Her hands trembled as she lifted her head. My pack was slaughtered, she said. We were accused of treason we didn't commit. Calvin offered vengeance. I thought it justice. She looked at him, eyes raw. I joined them because I wanted someone to pay. And you found me instead, he said. I found a monster who refused to be one. He flinched. You fought beside them. I did, she whispered, until I saw them strike you down. Then I turned against them. The truth landed between them like a blade. Damon stepped closer, eyes glinting in the half-light. You saved me because you pitied me? Because I just loved you, she said, the words breaking as they left her mouth. Even knowing what you'd do if you ever found out. The silence that followed was unbearable. The moon watched without mercy. The trees leaned closer as though to listen. He reached out, his hand gripping her face, not cruelly but as if to hold the truth still long enough to breathe it. I should kill you, he whispered. Then do it, she said, her eyes wet but unwavering. At least you'll finally be honest with yourself. His hand fell away. His chest rose once, then again, a war between heart and law. He turned, walking toward the darkness, leaving her chained in silver light. As he disappeared, Sierra's whisper carried after him, soft, aching. I never lied about loving you. He stopped for only a second, then kept walking. Two truths had finally met, and neither survived the collision. Chapter 18. Snow fell harder that night, burying the forest in silence. Damon stood at the edge of the stronghold, the storm clawing at his cloak. Below, the pack gathered. Torches burned, their light flickering across faces twisted by fear and betrayal. In the center, Sierra knelt in the snow, wrists bound, hair tangled, her white breath steady. Mariah's voice rose above the wind. She's a traitor, Alpha. You owe the dead their justice. Aaliyah stepped forward. And the living their mercy. The crowd hissed. The word mercy had no place here. Damon said nothing, his eyes fixed on the woman who had undone him with a truth he never wanted. The firelight touched her cheekbones, her lashes glittering with frost. She looked small, yet unbroken. Speak, he said at last. I have nothing left to defend, Sierra murmured. Only what I chose. Her gaze lifted to his, clear as ice. If love was my crime, I accept the punishment. Something cracked behind his ribs. Every memory, her hands on his scars, her laughter in the mist, the night she kissed him like prayer, rose and fell like waves he could no longer swim against. He opened his mouth, but no words came. His wolves waited for judgment. His beta waited for mercy. Sierra waited for the end. Then a voice broke through the blizzard. Decide, Alpha. Calvin stepped from the tree line, alive, scarred, smirking, eyes like poison. The pack recoiled in shock. Or shall I decide for you? Sierra's breath caught. Damon's blood turned to ice. Calvin smiled. And as the storm closed in around them, the truth that shattered everything was only beginning. Chapter 19. The storm hadn't passed. It had simply changed its shape. Calvin stood in the snow-drowned clearing, scarred, alive, his grin splitting the dark. Around him, half a dozen loyalists emerged from the fog like ghosts risen for vengeance. You always underestimated love, brother, he said. It ruins every beast eventually. Damon stepped forward, silver eyes blazing. You used her, Calvin laughed. I used her grief. You used her heart. Which of us sinned worse? Sierra's chains dragged behind her as she rose from the ground. Enough. Her voice trembled but did not break. You twisted everything, my pain, their deaths, even your own brother's trust. Calvin tilted his head, pitying. You think you're pure now because you changed sides? You killed for me once, remember? Her breath caught. Damon turned sharply. The truth slamming into him again like a reopened wound. Yet in her silence he saw something he hadn't before. Remorse, not deceit. You murdered your own, he growled. I buried them, Sierra said. You're the one who keeps digging. The wind cut through their standoff, scattering snow across the corpses of the past. Calvin's voice softened, venom sheathed in silk. You think love makes you strong? It made her weak. She saved you when she should have slit your throat. Sierra's hands curled into fists. Damon took a step closer to her, without thinking, without permission. And that mistake, he said, is the reason you're standing here instead of rotting with the others. Calvin's smile died. Then let's fix that. The forest erupted with movement, wolves clashing in a blur of steel and fur. Damon threw himself into the chaos, cutting through Calvin's followers with savage grace. Sierra tore through too, her claws gleaming red under moonlight. Calvin's roar echoed through the clearing. I'll strip everything you love! Damon's blade met his brother's claws in a violent spark. The sound was ancient. Blood against blood, love turned to war. When the dust settled, only two remained standing, Alpha and Omega. Calvin had disappeared again, and for the first time since the blood moon, Damon realized who his true equal was. Not the brother he'd lost, but the woman who refused to break. Two predators, one heartbroken, one reborn, turned toward the same enemy. The war for Silverfang had begun. Chapter 20. Morning found the stronghold silent. The snow was stained in old crimson. The air carried the heavy ache of victory not yet claimed. Damon stood in the war hall, the long table cracked from years of decisions made in anger. His wolves waited, eyes wary, hearts uncertain. Then Sierra entered. The chains were gone, her hair loose, her presence steady as moonlight. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Mariah spat, "She deceived us." Elias countered, "She saved him." "She betrayed us first." "She fought beside us last night." The debate swelled until Damon's voice cut through it like thunder. Enough. Silence fell. He turned to face them, every word deliberate. "We stand because she chose mercy over revenge, because when I was broken she saved me. That's more loyalty than most of you have shown." The wolves shifted uneasily. Sierra's gaze met his, gratitude flickering beneath exhaustion. "By your own laws," Mariah whispered, "she should die." "Then the law dies with me," Damon said. Gasps filled the hall. Elias bowed his head, the first to kneel. One by one, the others followed. Sierra stepped closer, her voice trembling. "You'd defy your pack for me?" "For truth," he said, then softer. "For you." His hand rose, slow and sure, his thumb brushing the place beneath her throat where a mark might one day rest. Not a claim, an acknowledgement. She breathed in sharply, the contact searing through every wall she had left. The wolves watched in reverent silence as Alpha and Omega stood together, united not by blood or law, but by something far rarer. Choice. Outside, thunder rolled over the mountains. The scent of war drifted in on the wind. Sierra looked toward the door. "He'll come again." Damon nodded. "Then let him. This time we hunt together." The pack's fear turned to awe, and for the first time, the Alpha didn't stand alone. Chapter 21. The full moon rose over the valley like a blade drawn to strike. Snow fell fast, blurring the line between heaven and hell. Calvin's loyalists descended in a black wave, their howls shaking the forest. Within the fortress walls, Damon's wolves answered, low, unified, unafraid. The battle began not with a roar, but a heartbeat. Damon and Sierra fought side by side, a rhythm forged through fire. He moved like shadow, she like wind, her claws flashing where his blade could not reach. Calvin came through the storm, his eyes burning like embers. "You should have let me kill you," he bellowed. Damon met him mid-strike, steel clashing against fang. "You talk too much." Their struggle tore through the clearing, crashing against fallen trees and broken stone. Around them, chaos ruled. Blood slicked the snow. Wolves fell and rose again. Sierra fought her way toward them, her lungs burning. When Calvin lunged, aiming for Damon's throat, she moved without thought, instinct faster than reason. Her claws sank deep into Calvin's side. He staggered, gasping. "You think he'll love you for saving him?" "I don't need him to," she said. I already do. She pulled back her hand, crimson dripping from her fingers. Damon stood behind her, his breath ragged. Enough, he said, voice hoarse but resolute. He's beaten. Calvin's chest heaved, disbelief flickering in his eyes. You'd spare me? Mercy isn't weakness, Damon answered. It's the one thing you'll never understand. Sierra's gaze softened. She stepped aside. Calvin fell to his knees, fury bleeding into exhaustion. Snow covered the wounds he'd made, the sins he'd never repent. As the last echoes of battle faded, Damon turned to his wolves, what remained of them, and to the woman standing blood-streaked beside him. The pack lowered their heads, not in fear, in choice. The moon watched as Silverfang knelt, not before power but love. Calvin knelt in the snow, blood darkening the white around him. Damon stood over him, the weight of choice colder than steel. Beyond the ridge, the first pale light touched the horizon. The night bled into dawn. Chapter 22. The night bled into dawn. Ash clung to the battlefield like fog, muffling the cries of the dying. Damon stood over Calvin, his blade pressed to his brother's throat. The steel trembled, not from weakness, but from war inside his chest. Calvin's breath rasped. Blood streaked his neck, his grin ghostly. Do it. Finish what the moon began. Wind tore through the clearing, scattering the scent of smoke and wolf. Sierra stood a few paces behind, her body marked by battle, her eyes by sorrow. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Damon's jaw locked. You wanted my crown, he said quietly. You wanted my ruin. Why? Calvin's laughter cracked like glass. You ruled through fear. I only gave them a reason to stop kneeling. The words hit harder than claws. Around them the pack waited, their eyes rimmed with exhaustion and awe. The world seemed to hold its breath. Damon saw the truth of it then. Their rebellion had not begun with hunger for power, but hunger for dignity. Fear had birthed this war long before Calvin lifted a blade. Sierra took one step forward. Her voice was raw. You can end it, not with death, but with mercy. He turned toward her, the fire in his eyes flickering, uncertain. Mercy. The word tasted like weakness and salvation all at once. Calvin spat blood. Mercy? You think love redeems monsters? Damon's hand shook once, then the sword fell. It hit the ground with a hollow clang that echoed through every heart present. He stepped back, his voice low and steady. You'll live, he said, but you'll live in exile, alone. Carry the weight you gave me. Calvin's face broke, not from pain but disbelief. You're no alpha, he whispered. No, Damon said. I'm something you could never be. Free. The pack watched in silence as Calvin staggered into the mist, the first light of dawn swallowing his shape. For the first time in generations, no blood followed an alpha's mercy. Sierra's knees gave way. Damon caught her before she fell. Their foreheads met, breath mingling, the world dissolving to heartbeat and hush. The moon faded behind the mountains. The war was over. The pack knelt, not to power, but to peace. Chapter 23. Days turned to quiet. The fortress smelled of rain and pine again. No torches burned for war, only hearths for warmth. Sierra moved among the wounded, hands gentle, voice softer than prayer. Her touch steadied trembling bodies, but her heart still bled from unseen wounds. Damon found her there, kneeling beside a dying soldier who once spat at her name. She whispered to him until his breath slowed and peace claimed him. Only then did she lift her gaze. Their eyes met across the silence. He crossed the room, exhaustion etched into every movement. His armor was gone. The alpha stood only as a man, bare-handed, unguarded. You shouldn't be here, she murmured. I had to be. His voice was quiet thunder. He knelt beside her, close enough to feel her trembling. I've spent years killing for loyalty. I never learned how to keep it alive. She turned, disbelief flickering through tears. You don't have to earn it anymore. He looked down at their hands, hers stained with healing, his with blood. Slowly, he laid his over hers. Then teach me. She hesitated, then her fingers turned beneath his, meeting his palm. Her voice barely carried. Then listen. The moment broke something and mended everything at once. The bond that once burned between them now pulsed steady, not as command, but as choice. Outside, the pack moved differently. They spoke softly, laughed louder. For the first time, Silverfang wasn't ruled by fear. Damon brushed a stray lock from Sierra's cheek. "Stay," he whispered, her eyes closed, relief trembling through her. "Only if you promise not to lead alone." He smiled, small, human, almost shy. Never again. Their foreheads touched, lips finding each other not as apology but renewal. The kiss was quiet, reverent, a vow of mercy, not possession. Love no longer burned. It healed. Chapter 24. Weeks passed and spring returned to Silverfang. The snow melted from the peaks, bearing rivers that sang like memories freed. The pack rebuilt with hands once meant for war. Timber replaced tombstones, laughter filled the courtyards. On the southern ridge, two figures walked among the pines, Alpha and Omega, no longer rulers and sinner, only souls who had learned to breathe again. Sierra's hair caught the sunlight, untamed as the wind. Damon's arm brushed hers as they moved through the clearing where he'd once fallen, where she'd once saved him. She stopped, her fingers brushing the earth. "It's strange," she said softly. "Everything began here." He looked toward the horizon where the blood moon used to rise. "No," he murmured. "It began the night you refused to let me die." She smiled faintly. "Then I'll keep refusing." They stood in silence as the forest came alive. Birds returning, wolves howling, not in warning but joy. Somewhere behind them, the pack watched from afar, united by quiet pride. Damon reached for her hand. "They'll write songs about this war," he said. "Let them," she whispered, "but let them end in peace." He pulled her close, his lips brushing the crown of her head. The forest held them, two halves of one promise. High above, the moon rose white and clean, the blood finally washed away. There were 6 wolves that night, the voice of time would later whisper, but only one heart brave enough to change its fate. And in that stillness, beneath the quiet hymn of new beginnings, Silverfang stood whole again, its Alpha and his Omega not bound by law or legend, but by the mercy that remade them. Hope did not roar, it breathed. If you listen to the very end, like, share, and subscribe, and stay with me for the next moonlit tale.